Hi, this is Curt, and welcome to another edition of Fire Law Roundup.
Okay, I wanted to kind of move past that a little bit on the interesting level to the U.S. Forest Service. This is a great, interesting case. I'll take issue with it in a moment, but so here's basically what happened. We had a fire in New Mexico. It's the largest wildfire in New Mexico. The U.S. Forest Service was doing some controlled prescribed burns. They had, I think, if I believe what's in the complaint, they did admit fault that they allowed it to get out of control, or it did get out of control. They said it was their prescribed burn and got out of control. So that fire merges with the California fire. In any event, that fire was not contained until August 21st. But a month or so earlier, we're back in 22, so everyone knows, a month or so earlier, we have torrential downpours. And there was an area or large area, swath of land, where there's no more vegetation and it can't control the flooding. And there's a flash flood in the area and people died. And this is the relatives are suing on behalf of the families of three people who died, or at behalf of the three people who died. And the fire service is charged with, first, you screwed up because you burnt too much, right?
You caused the fire. You caused
the fire. Okay. But that's not really the issue. The issue then is, you created a dangerous situation. You didn't warn anybody that if there was a flash flood, you could be in trouble. You need to, get out of the area, and that the flash flooding then kills somebody, and it would not have happened but for this fire, right? There's a lot of cause. Right? They talk about it. Is it a burn scar? Is that what they use as a kind of vacant area where there's no trees and vegetation to stop the rain that ultimately killed the people? My issue with this, so again, simple facts, you caused a fire, you admit you caused a fire, the fire takes away vegetation that would have limited the harshness, the danger of the torrential downpours and flooding. Let's assume for the moment they can prove that. Let's assume they can prove it. I'm happy to accept that some expert is going to come forward saying, look at the water patterns. This is the tree density. It would have been broken up, whatever. The question really is proximate cause. And you might as well call me proximate cause Pinsky, because that's what I always am looking for is, fine, maybe you had a duty, you breached a duty. PCP, yeah, which is my father's initials. Anyway, but maybe, if you had a duty, you breached a duty, right? But then was that breach of duty causing the fire which took away the vegetation? Was that the proximate cause of the people's deaths? There was a torrential downpour you could not have predicted at least a month earlier or 2 months earlier, or when the fire started, right? You couldn't have predicted that there would be a torrential downpour. Maybe there was a high likelihood. Maybe it was so likely you should have known. But then to know where the runoff's going to go and how it's going to affect somebody, I mean, to me, that seems like a very tough road to hoe. Now, in truth, what's going to happen, my belief, there's going to be exchange of expert witness reports. They're going to say, I can prove it. Here's the map. And they're going to settle the darn thing. But this to say that a fire, and they're not saying they didn't handle the fire properly. Like a couple weeks ago, we have a case where, right, they didn't handle the fire properly.
Well,
that's very different.
Yeah, they threw the kitchen sink. I don't know if you scroll down on the article, they list they probably list about 15 different acts of negligence. And I think probably 3/4 of those fit right in with PCP. Okay. There's no probable cause. There's absolutely no, failing to follow the mandated directives in planning of prescribed burns, not even the lighting of just the planning. Okay.
But the last one is the big one, though.
Lighting. Huh?
Right. The last one was just failing to provide adequate warnings to decedents regarding the dangers of potential flash flooding in the area.
Right.
that's the only one I could really get my hands around to say, okay, should you have known? Now, look, I'm not a wildland guy. I've done the fires. You just did a huge fire, right? But I'm not a wildland guy, despite I've done wildland fires.
I'm not either. I'm not. One fire doesn't make somebody an expert.
Despite what everyone thinks, right?
Yeah, right.
And training fires certainly don't make anyone an expert.
Right.
So, but that said, maybe there is a way to predict it. But they're still in the midst of fighting the fire when this is going on. The fire's not under control for a month later. So I don't know, resources. Did you have time to do these evaluations? There's a lot into this. I just think it's very interesting that, take the general question, when a fire department does something that creates a possibility of injury, a month, 2 months, or maybe never are reliable for it. And what's
interesting is the fire was still apparently not under control, or I don't know if it was under control or not contained or not. What was the term that they used? The fire was not fully contained.
It was a month later.
Yeah, so the fire was still active at the time of the flood, which I think I would feel more comfortable in saying there's no duty. If the fire had happened, like if the fire had happened in April and it was out by May, and this happened in July, but the fire happened in April, and now was it April? I think it was. And then,
April 6th. Yeah.
And then, but it wasn't contained. It was still active in July when this happened. I don't know. I think that's a slight change, but again, I agree. I think there's a proximate cause issue that's going to run throughout this. Yeah. So I can't believe I gotta believe the U.S. Forest Service must have a team of attorneys. I mean, they must have a division of attorneys. They are constantly getting sued,
especially now. Right, we have seen such a huge uptick, not just against the fire service itself, but also like the electric companies in Hawaii and all these places where they're coming after us for wildland fires. What the problem is, you can't have it both ways, right? So in Canada, the Canadian wildfires were significantly bigger than they should have been because they don't manage the foliage, right? They don't take care of the underbrush. It's just too vast, and they don't dedicate the resources. Mm-hmm. And they can't face liability for that because, well, they're Canada. I don't know what they are, but generally municipalities don't face liability if they don't have the financial resources, or otherwise, divert the financial resources somewhere else. But then here we have, okay, they did do something they admit wrong, right? The fire got out of control, whatever our fault, but still, does that mean they're liable for everything else that happens down the road? This is, I don't know why this didn't dawn on me before. Okay. But we should have pointed this out before. When there is a declaration of emergency or a declaration of a disaster, one could be not so much local, but when there's a state declaration of emergency, state statutory immunity kicks in. Okay. And then when there's a federal declaration, and again, I don't know if I'm assuming there had to be at least a state declaration here, but when there's a federal declaration, federal immunity kicks in. And those who are responsible for managing the incident, responding, they're immune. It's one of the most comprehensive protective immunity protections. Of course, here they started the condition.
Yeah, right. So maybe that's going to be, we'll talk about what happens when you start the fire in the next thing we talk about with regard to the fireman's rule. But at least here, when there is a declaration of emergency or declaration of a disaster, there could be state immunity as well as federal immunity for tort. And it's very, very important because, think about, folks who respond in hurricane prone areas, Syracuse not being one of them, but up the coast, when you say once the winds get to 70 miles an hour, we're not going to respond.
Right.
Well, this provides immunity, that statute provides immunity protection. So just curious, I'm wondering if whether or not that immunity protection might kick in here.
I had a different thought, which was, don't they normally issue evacuation orders when these fires are happening?
Yeah.
Did they issue an evacuation order, and did the families ignore the evacuation order? If so, assumption of risk, you get what's coming to you. I hate to say it, but that's, that could be a defense. But to your point, we will see if what's followed up now is a motion to dismiss, if it's federal court, 12B6 or 12B2, whatever, motion to dismiss based on immunities or anything else. So that should come out soon. I presume we'll see that.